April 7, 1945. German Bf-109s rise into the skies above their homeland on a top-secret mission. German martial music is broadcast from the ground, at times interrupted by a woman's voice.
Ihr seid die Verteidiger von dem deutschen Volk. Vergesst nicht die Frauen und Kinder, begraben in den Trümmern von Dresden.
These are the men of a new fighter group, the Sonderkommando Elbe. Theirs is the most astonishing mission ever devised by the Luftwaffe, to ram their own aircraft into American bombers. To the west, the vanguard of a massive formation of 1,300 American bombers of the mighty 8th Air Force thunder into central Germany. The individual bomb groups that compose the bomber streams reach a predetermined initial point, or IP, then split off towards their own targets.
As they do that, they're really tightening up their formations, and they know that they're going to be over the target within the next 10 to 15 minutes.
One of these massive formations is led by the 389th Bomb Group, the Sky Scorpions, 31 consolidated B-24 Liberators, the most widely produced four-engine heavy bomber of World War II. Group Commander Colonel John Herboth is in the cockpit of the lead plane, the Palace of Dallas. No one aboard the gleaming Liberator can possibly imagine what is about to happen. 7,000 feet above, Sonderkommando Elbe pilot Heinrich Rossner spots the bombers of the 389th. He's alone. Poor flight coordination has separated him from his comrades. His lightly armored Bf-109 is ideal for this high-altitude surprise attack. He pushes the stick forward, opens the throttle, and hurtles towards the trailing B-24s intent on one goal, a brutal mid-air collision.
It must have been kind of a surprise to see this lone aircraft coming through and get close.
Rossner yanks the stick back and pulls up out of his dive, but he overshoots his intended victim. Now, Rossner brazenly pulls into formation with the very Liberators he's bent on destroying.
He meanders in and out of the formation, almost like a shark waiting to capture its prey.
The American gunners are stunned. They can't fire on the German fighter as it wends its way through the valley of gleaming aluminum. Rossner's mind races. Somehow he must complete the mission. He'll swing outside the formation and position himself to do the unthinkable. Ram the lead B-24 directly in the cockpit. Rossner hopes he can knock the American out of the sky while surviving the violent impact. Rossner jams the stick left. In the cockpit of the Palace of Dallas, Herboth and pilot Bob Dallas sight the 109 as it banks back to the right, directly towards them.
There pretty much wasn't anything they could do about it, but take on what they saw was coming at them.
Like a steel battering ram, Rossner rips into the cockpit of the Palace of Dallas, then careens into another B-24. The moving mass of the 109's 6,000-pound airframe slices through the thin aluminum and steel framework of the bombers.
Somehow he manages to bail out. He lands in his parachute and survives the whole ordeal.
But the men on board the bombers are not so lucky. The pilots struggle desperately with the controls to keep their planes in the air. It is only the beginning of their ordeal at the hands of the Sonderkommando Elbe. The Sonderkommando Elbe was born of Germany's near-complete devastation wrought by the Allied strategic bombing offensive. By late 1944, the Luftwaffe was a mere shadow of its former greatness, unable to defend the homeland.
The Luftwaffe was going downhill rather quickly toward the end of the war. One of the problems is they had lost a lot of their command pilots. The Luftwaffe fighter forces were made up mainly of young enlisted pilots.
Desperate action was needed. A young colonel named Hayo Hermann delivered an audacious proposal. Send hundreds of Bf-109s skyward, not to shoot down American bombers, but to ram them.
It was supposed to be shocking. The Americans were supposed to be shocked. They were supposed to have such fear that they would say, no, we are not flying anymore.
Hermann believed that at least some of the Elbe pilots would survive the brutal encounter, bail out of their destroyed fighter, and return to base ready to undertake more attacks. The goal was to force the American 8th Air Force to suspend bombings for 4 to 6 weeks. It was hoped that this would buy Germany enough time to amass sufficient numbers of the new Me-262 jet fighter to win back control of the skies over the Fatherland. A call for volunteers was sent out on March 7, 1945.
He asked for volunteers for a special mission with a 10% survival chance. Now, we were young, 19, 20, 21 years old. We never thought we'd die. So for us, that 10% meant a 90% survival chance.
The consequences of the bombings, especially dead women, dead children, and dead elderly, triggered sharp emotions. I thought I had to do something.
2,000 volunteered. 300 were selected and gathered at Stendal Air Base on the Elbe River. Most were new pilots with little or no combat experience. From the beginning, their training was limited.
We didn't even have enough fuel to check the technical condition in a test flight before the mission.
Nevertheless, permission to proceed is granted by Adolf Hitler. A date for the first attack is selected, April 7, 1945. Against a force of 1,300 American bombers and 800 escort fighters, a meager 180 fighters are mobilized for the ramming attack.
At this point, the war had already been lost, and there was little chance of turning it around. It was nothing but sending pilots to the slaughter.
Now, Elbe pilot Heinrich Rossner has initiated the effort with staggering success, ramming the lead element of the 389th Bomb Group. The Palace of Dallas is shattered. The men in the nose section, including Group CO John Herbo, are dead.
What's going on in these unpressurized B-24s is catastrophic noise and screaming and yelling and metal groaning and breaking and violence. total violence.
Only 3 of the 11-man crew managed to escape the doomed airplane. In the deputy lead plane, pilot Walter Kunkel fights to survive.
Immediately, the plane starts in a dive. First Lieutenant Kunkel is using rudder, yoke, anything he could possibly do to fly the airplane.
The Liberator is unresponsive. It continues a slow outside loop.
The airplane is nosing over, creating extensive negative Gs. They are up in their seats, they're out, they're reaching down for the yoke. As the airplane totally noses over, almost fully on its back, pulling negative Gs, huge motions now start breaking the airplane apart violently.
Kunkel's plane disintegrates, but miraculously, Kunkel and his co-pilot, James Tollison, are thrown clear. The rest of the group is shocked by what has occurred, but nevertheless continues the run-in from the IP.
When an aircraft is shot down, it is not an orderly sight. The feeling is, there, but for the grace of God, go I, and it may still happen to me before this is all over.
The group reforms. Perry Sessoms, lead of the High Right Squadron, assumes command. In spite of the loss, the 389th will deliver its bombs on target.